Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in Venice, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael. And today we have our 2-hour special, the 2024 Prediction Show. And coming back to the show, we have Carolyn Marshall and Marnie Olson of Cosmic Playhouse. They're our astrologers today. And Kerry Jane of Metanoa, who is our numerologist. And I'll probably say a few words too. But before we get started, Michael has a few announcements.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our show. It's really good to have you guys. Next week, or actually a week from this coming Wednesday, so about 10 days from now or so, we have our good friend Reverend Jim McGrath back on as our guest, and he'll be talking about the importance that ritual and theater plays in spirituality and overall well-being. So it's going to be lots of fun visiting with him. You can get all the information on our show on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SAXTH, all spelled out. And while you're there, if you can afford to, buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi. Helps us cover our expenses a little bit. But the most important thing, go to YouTube, click like and subscribe, and help grow our audience, and that's what means the most to us. So I don't want to take up a ton of time today because we're going to have a lot of fun with this episode. And I want to brag a little bit at first because my prediction came true last year, just to kick this off. And what I predicted was that Bigfoot would not be found, and indeed he was not found. So I feel very good about that. So I definitely got that one right. So with that, I'm going to kick it back to all you guys. So take it away, Krista.
Great. I'm glad
magic.
you said that because congratulations, you were right. And I also did want to mention, I think today the moon is in Aquarius. Isn't that right, ladies?
Well, soon it's going to, where are we at now? The moon is, yes, 25 degrees, my dear.
There we go. And so I did want to mention just in general a little bit about the 2023 prediction show, which was, by the way, very entertaining to listen to again. We had some really fun interpretations of like the Saturn-Pluto relationship. That was really fun. We had some good things there. So it was several of you, I think Marnie and Caroline and even Kerry to some degree talked about it as a year of transition. And Kerry said it was the beginning of the end. And also I did want to say, maybe this is not a super, like specialized prediction, but I did talk about the rise of the robots. And I think because of it becoming more conscious even now what's going on in AI, I think that was true, but that was kind of an easy one, And then Caroline, do you remember the amazing prediction you got right?
Of course I do.
Yes. Well, why don't you share with us?
Oh, well, it was about the first indictment. I think Michael asked me the question when Donald Trump would be indicted. And remember, this was before any indictments. And I did a real quick look at the calendar, and I saw the April moon there. It was the April full moon and April 5th, I believe it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said it's going to be April 5th because it's a Libra full moon. And well, it was April 4th that he was indicted for the first time. So yeah, and what it did, it taught me a lot. I mean, that moment crystallized everything that I've been kind of trying to pull together. All of the timing that when you're trying to do predictive astrology, always look to the moon. Okay. We have the big outer planets and they're great. We have Pluto, we have all the big fancy ones, but the moon is right down here with us. The moon is the people, right? And so when you look to the moon, and that's what I've been doing, is I just look to the moon, the lunations, the new moon and the full moon. So I give my credit to that prediction to the moon.
Yeah, I think you, in the show you said it was April 6th and it was in, 2 days before. And what was also interesting, you called it the Justice Moon. And I thought that was really cool. And it was the first time ever a president had been indicted in this way, I think, too. And so I just thought it was so really accurate, it was very specific. Even what you had to say was very specific. So that's good insight to talk about how you came about with the moon being an important way of looking at it. So because doing predictions, like you said, world predictions, or it is tricky. You have to find the way that works for you.
Right. And the thing is about the moon predictions later on, when it was on the floor, I remember when I was watching it happen and I watched the indictment come down, I was just standing there looking at the television and I thought, oh, why every time I make a prediction around the moon, any astrologer does, we always put in two days before and 2 days after the moon, right? So your prediction, you always leave a little, 4 or 5, and sometimes a week. It'll be that week. Usually you'll say, oh, it's the week of the full moon. But I just picked that day because it was kind of quick and dirty. I think it was just like right near the end of the show. And I was like, okay, here's one. So yeah, and I always put in, well, it'll be 2 days before or 2 days after. And I didn't put that in there. I was like, oh man. Okay.
Yeah, that's fair enough, though, honestly. Prediction is an art and it can be incredibly exact. But when you're dealing with sort of the big picture energies, what we find with prediction, the more variables, the more changeability that you have. So like I might predict something like more accurately, very small about something happening in my office because I might not have that many variables. So prediction seems to require thinking about all the wheels that could turn and how they interact with each other. So I think that's fair enough. Like if you get it that close to me.
I want to drill down on that just a little bit about that Libra Justice Moon. I was watching some, MSNBC show or something about the election or something in politics. And they said, it's really funny because the most important day of last year was April 4th. Was the day of the entire year for the country, because that was the day that Trump was indicted for the first time, right? And it is about justice because it's Libra, and what's happened is now we've gone into the Libra Aries nodes, right? So all of the moons are going to be tripping on the nodes, right? Tripping with the nodes. So it is very much about justice, and the Venus star point went to Libra 29 degrees in 2022. So, and justice without love is revenge, right? I mean, that's putting it kind of like paraphrasing Martin Luther King a little bit here, but he said true justice has to have love in it, right? In other words, it has to be, it can't be hate. Hate brings revenge. And see, we're kind of seeing that working out. It's teaching us a lot, the Libra Aries access, right? What justice is, and so I think it's very much influencing this year too. And we have a Libra moon coming up this year, and it's going to be an eclipse. So
we'll be talking about that too.
Stay tuned for a big eclipse talk. Yeah.
So I did forget to just say welcome, ladies. Welcome, Kerry, to the show. Thank you for coming on again. Thank you, Marnie. And of course, Caroline. And I thought it might be nice. Last year, we did like just maybe a little introduction to some of the themes for 2024 that strike you, because I think that's also important. Was there anything kind of overall that you wanted to say? And we'll start with Kerry first with the numerology.
Overall, well, I would like to start with just going back to the 7-year that we just had coming out of that. I don't remember exactly what I said in our last episode, but something that I kind of harped on, at least on my own channel on Metanoia, is this theme of disillusionment that should have taken place to some extent. And if you looked closely, there were some bigger themes in that. Perhaps some people like experience that in their personal life, but really as a collective, we should have gained some kind of clarity that came out of usually a hard truth, something that is difficult to accept. And that could be because our egos are involved with that and we don't want to overcome that, or it might just be kind of a mind bender and really hard to wrap our head around. For some people, the fact that, democracy is at stake, that's hard for some people to wrap their heads around. Or like if you go into the UFO thing and the UAP, the whole alien stuff, that's also really hard for some people still to like wrap their head around. So I think that hopefully we had some kind of disillusionment as a collective out of 2023. And now that we have some kind of clarity, we move into this 8 year where we're brought back to reality and we're able to experience some kind of executive function based off of this new clarity that we have. So, yeah, once we've accepted a lot of things, we can finally move forward. And often this process is very hard. Often the right thing to do and the hard thing to do are the same. Thinking I'm not a tarot expert, but the Tower card does kind of come to mind, which scares a lot of people. But usually when that card comes up, something really needs to happen. The thing that's going to happen absolutely has to. So a lot of mixed feelings about this year for me personally. I don't know how everyone else is feeling, but it's like on one hand, I'm really excited because I'm like, wow, maybe the thing will finally happen. We see progress, we see expansion in areas that finally, get attention. We have kind of like a lot of untapped resources that I feel like we're not really aware of. And then on the other hand, with, yeah, what we already kind of said in this episode, there's like uh, issues with law and justice. We have war. We have like financial burdens, health problems. This is all also heavily tied into the number 8 because the 8 has everything to do with our physical reality. So, and I think a lot of people do kind of feel uncertain. They feel uneasy about 2024 because the nature of the number 8 is that it can go this way or that way. It's kind of topsy-turvy. It's like you could do a complete 180. And so that's like a lot of potential right there. It's like, wow, we could completely turn our trajectory around this year. But what road are we about to go on, That is still we have no idea. And I am on a prediction show, but personally, to me, I think the future is always changing. And in my practice, I try to give people the tools to actively engage in the present to create the best outcome given the circumstance. And I think that it's really hard to say this is going to happen this month and this is going to happen this month. What I can say is like here are the themes that are playing out, and depending on what we decide is the road that we're going to, what we're going to do with that circumstance, I don't know. So yeah, the 8, I feel like this year it's very matter of fact. It's getting down to business, and this year powerful people, I think, will be held accountable finally. And it might not even be the people that you think of. For example, like just a local example on my end, because in my day job, I'm in like natural resource management. There's, I think, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or some federal agency is getting sued by a baykeeper for not following through with moving the status of longfin smelt, which is like an endangered species, to like more critically endangered, some kind of level with that. They kind of let that go on their end. So now we have not been protecting the species that is just plummeting. So you wouldn't think that a federal agency dedicated to conservation would be held accountable for the things, but it's I think this year is going to be about, hey, that job, the thing that you were created to do for, how you not only did not do it, but you like committed crimes in the process. It's going to not just be the people who are in the spotlight that we're already aware of. It's going to be people and agencies and companies that you would not even expect. That's what I can kind of think would happen in this kind of year with everything that's been going on. And most of all, the takeaway message is that I think that what we value and what actually has value will be challenged and hopefully reformed. Like what actually matters, what has value. Our currency is like living off of hopes and dreams. So what is it that deserves our time, our energy, our attention? What actually is that? And Yeah, I was kind of all over the place. I hope that.
No, that's good. You know, I will say about last year when you talked about the seven, since I did listen to the show recently, is you did talk about the ego potentially being a problem last year too. So you kind of mentioned this now, so you were correct about that as well. And and then I just to sort of talk about the eight in general. Well, maybe I'll do that a little later. I want to get sort of Marnie's take first on what do you think are some of the main things that you noticed about 2024 that caught your attention?
Oh, well, there's like millions, but I'll try to just do like a
Only
quick
millions.
kind of like, I mean, obviously we have one of the major things, of course, is Pluto going into Aquarius again. We got a little movie trailer of Pluto in Aquarius last year, but it's going to go in this year. We're only going to have one last little dip into Capricorn in the fall, and then it's going to go back into Aquarius. It's going to hang out there for a while. So I think that, you know, one of the major things I've been thinking a lot about is that time period. You know, we talked a lot in previous episodes about the USA's sort of birth chart and having Pluto at 27 degrees Capricorn, America experiencing their Pluto return, and then that period of time between, July 4th, 1776, and then the signing of the Constitution in 1787 or whatever it was. In that period, then Pluto, on the signing of the Constitution, Pluto was at 14 degrees Aquarius. So I think that, and this is of course not just 2024, but what we've kind of been starting since last year and what we're going into is very much about the, identity of our country. And this of course is very USA centric, what I'm saying, but because we're also connected globally, it's something that's going to, sort of impact everyone. But I think that we're just sort of having our own little identity crisis as a country, which is from that point of saying, hey, we are free, we're declaring our independence, to, oh, wait a minute, we're going to crap all over each other unless we make some rules about it. And it's the difference between, having rights and getting rights and then keeping those rights. And I think that we're heading into constitutional crisis. I think that, this next period of time between that 27 Capricorn and that 14 degree Aquarius mark, that it's going to be a lot about what we are destroying in our country and what we potentially need to rebuild. Pluto is a destroyer, but just with destruction comes regeneration. So I think that's the big sort of picture. And I think that, of course, Pluto going into Aquarius shifts us all into a new age, that we're getting away from that, what we saw from the beginning of Pluto and Capricorn, that like, particularly the flaws of capitalism that we're now going to be facing up against. What are those potentially scary things that come with Aquarius, which is people's, kind of technological dread, the fear of robots. Is the Terminator coming for me? Is AI going to destroy us? And I think that there's a lot of like hippy dippy stuff that's attributed to Aquarius, which is very valid, that it's about people and it's about humanity and it's about revolution and it's about fighting for your independence and all of that. But there's that dark side too, which is my ideas are the best ideas, and innovation. And innovation is great, but I think that for me, Pluto and Aquarius, the thing that's a little bit scary is that it is our own innovation which could potentially destroy us, whether that's AI or robots or weapons or whatever it is. That innovation has a dark side too. And so that's just something I've been thinking about a lot. That's just one thing, but it's a big thing for the year. So.
And Caroline, did you have any sort of quick comments about what you think is, Caroline, the general tone of the year? I mean, we heard a little bit about the justice, but anything else that just kind of off the cuff you noticed right away?
I want to expand a little bit on the justice cause here. Like I said about the moons, the first new moon of this year was a couple of days ago, and the 10th. And I was like, okay, I'm going to look and see what's going on in the world right here, right now. And at this moment, because this is the beginning, this is the first new moon, it's the first moon of 2024. And of course, all those things that Marnie said, yeah, I don't have to say those. Thank you, Marnie. That's great. But so I can talk about drilling down here. So what was happening that day internationally in the world? Now, I didn't see any of this on the media, the mainstream media, but in Hague, the International Court of Justice was in session, and South Africa had brought brought charges up against Israel for crimes against human rights. Okay, so and they are arguing it now, and it's about human rights and justice for the world. And I think that is going to be a major theme this year. And it all ties in with our Pluto return last year, the United States. In October, when the war in Hamas and Israel started, that was October 10th, right? October 10th was the very last Pluto conjunction return junction point at 27 degrees. The very last one. I was waiting all year. What's going to happen that day? And Venus come out of retrograde. And what happened? We got, the war started, it flared up in Israel. And now this is the United States chart, Pluto return, right?
Right.
This is the last point. So how does this war in Israel have anything to do with the United States karma? Well, we see how it's definitely going to be the point. Oh, we're on the brink, the brink of what are we going to be as a country? You know what I mean? And the fact that we're going to go back all the way back to 1948 when that International Court of Justice was set up because of the Holocaust and, the Jewish Holocaust. And ironically, here we go. Now, Israel is accused of genocide. And so this is a very big picture, very profound. And I think we're very tied in with it because this was our very last, exact hit, and it happened exactly on that day. And it was so concise. And that's why I think it's the theme. It's calling the theme of the whole year. Plus, with Pluto going into Aquarius, it's going to be about international human rights and all this political, all the power plays, the Plutonian power plays and the people. I think this is the trigger point of a revolution. The Pluto and Aquarius revolution.
Well, I think I'm just going to add a little to the whole why the U.S. might be involved in other countries. I think it's because we have Jupiter and Cancer in the 7th house. We have a lot of 7th house Cancerian planets, that expansion into other areas. And I do think, and the other thing that I will bring up later in the show is I think you want to look at Pluto's relationship to Chiron in the U.S. chart and also its opposition to its own Mercury. This is why it's a little more complicated with the Pluto in the U.S. and especially when you think about communication in the U.S. It's like, it's nuts here sometimes. But I did want to add just a quick little, I did just a very general look with this 12 card spread that I do, which is very vague, I know, but I'm trying to look at sort of a pattern. And to me, I did see a pattern that was somewhat stressful in the beginning of the year. And there's more of that kind of the past still being worked on. But I did see a little more balance in some of the year. And interesting enough, the star card appeared and it was more towards, September. And so that made me feel kind of good. And the star, of course, in a lot of decks is associated with Aquarius. And then funny, true story. Last year, I talked about Aleister Crowley appearing through the Prince of Wands and the Queen of Swords in the spread because those are his two cards. And it appeared again. And I used a different system. It's like I did it by hand last year. This year I used the computer, so I could not have known. I thought it was just kind of amusing. I don't really know what it means, though. So he's somehow working through all of us. I don't know. But he's there definitely some more interest in him, as I said before, but I just thought that was sort of amusing. So
I'd like to make another quick point about 2024. Just what you said, Chiron's a big player this year. And that Chiron is, unexplored in a lot of astrology, and a lot of astrologers don't really, but we got to pay attention now because Chiron is conjuncting the North Node in Aries. Okay. And so when we have this big eclipse in April, Chiron is going to be conjuncting it. And that's why I wanted to bring up, that's why I started with the justice theme, international justice, because just what you said, the star card is about healing, right? Chiron is about healing, but it's also about re-examining our wounds, right? Going back to the trauma. And that's exactly what we're doing. It's as an entire world with the International Court of Justice. I think it's all turning on that. And we have to heal these terrible traumas that we've had for the last, 84 years. Uranus is going to be conjuncting Agul this year. And the last time it did in Taurus, Uranus is going to be at 26 degrees Taurus. The last time it was there was in May of 1941. And that's when World War II started. And so, we're going, it's like we're going back there, and we have to, because we don't want to repeat history.
Yeah, we definitely have a tendency not to learn from our history. I think maybe because we don't study it anymore. I don't know.
Yeah.
Might be, or at least some of the real history, as you know, doesn't get into the schools and things. So that's another one of the issues. So Kerry, what do you think about some of the thoughts about justice and sort of that cycle of justice connecting to the past? Does that connect to, like, I know that sometimes you can go back with the numbers back to like the 2 and the 3 and what's built up to the 8, because obviously numerology is got a pattern and cycles. And so do you see anything like that kind of coming back from the past too?
Well, I mean, I might have already said this, but the 8 itself is very much rooted in law and justice and things like that and accountability already. So that's that chapter. I mean, when I do an individual's cycle, I would tell them in this cycle that, hey, you should think back to your 4-year, which I think was 2020, right? And you should think about the framework that was placed during that chapter, what was set in motion, because now it is either going to be actualized or you're going to continue where you left off with that in some way. So perhaps more will come to light about the pandemic. And I think that, law and justice regarding that, perhaps something will come to a head with that. I mean, that's already kind of underway. And perhaps if you want to talk about repeating history, I don't know if you all remember the kinds of protests that had broken out during that time where it was palpable, the energy
Right.
during that time. I lived in, unfortunately, a pretty hostile environment at the time, so everyone had a different experience. But because of where I was located on the East Coast at the time, that was heavy. But I would say we're later in this cycle, and the thing that's really interesting about numerology is that we are experiencing a spiral. And if you were to visualize a 9-year cycle and like put it up on its side and examine that spiral and see where things align, you'd see like, oh yes, we are revisiting that, hopefully at a different point though. Hopefully something was learned along the way. We made some kind of progress. We built something, we learned something, etc. And we come to revisit this thing from the past, except now knowing what we know from the immediate past, this is what this is going to look like. So I don't know if that answers your question at all, but I would want to also just add to what was said about capitalism. I mean, just as a side note, with the coming of Aquarius and Pluto in Aquarius, as an Aquarius, I have always been hoping that we realize that the real evolution, evolution in consciousness looks like equality, looks like determining how to create equality and not how many toys that we have, which seems to have been what was sold to us. And what we've been calling innovation up until now has actually just been systematically taking our liberties away from us so that they can be sold back to us for a profit. And I hope that we realize that at some point. Like a lot of us already have, but I hope we can all come to a kind of consensus at some point that this is going backwards. We've been going backwards because we had all this tech advancement and we had all this whatever, and kind of like children, we played with it rather than knowing what the evolution of a race is actually supposed to look like, which is making this life livable for everyone. Yeah, that's my take on it as an Aquarius. And going back to numerology, it's just going to be a really powerful year, and our thoughts have power. We all of what we're thinking, all that, wherever our attention is going, that has a lot of power. So that is also something that we should just keep reminding ourselves throughout this year. Just be aware of what you're thinking of and where all of your attention is going. And yeah, maybe be like, okay, maybe I should spend a little bit less time on that, a little bit more time on this. I think that would create a huge impact in some way.
Well, that really connects to my understanding of Pluto. Pluto, I've been doing a deeper dig into the mythology of Pluto. And Pluto does not have power on Earth except through relationships. And in fact, if you look at some of the creative interpretations of the Pluto story, most of it is their love stories. It's really interesting because I started looking, well, what does the public think about Pluto? And they really get into that whole like Persephone Pluto thing. And so anyway, I'm not the first to say this, but that there are astrologers that see Pluto as the deeper terrain. I don't even know if you want to call it the subconscious mind. It's like so deep, kind of, it's hard to even get to. And so I think Pluto in Aquarius is going to give us a new understanding of the depth of the mind, that we're going to have new ideas, whether it's through psychology, metaphysics. Pluto can also, one astrologer says Pluto rules ESP and the invisible worlds. And so in that way, I think Pluto is kind of exciting. Is that, you know, I'm sure there are things going on. There's always a lot more going on with experiments with ESP than people realize. It doesn't take much. If you do a little digging, you'll find like people have been doing it for 20 years in Europe, you know, and there's some like really scientific experiments. They're not like, and they've gotten legitimate things about telepathy. And so that idea of watching our mind, but also I feel like, this is what I got. I have Aquarius rising, that Pluto, the understanding of Pluto is going to change because of Aquarius, that it's an innovator. It's got new thoughts, and Pluto is kind of new to this version of humanity. So I like that idea of sort of watching how we're thinking, going deeper into the psyche starting this year. I agree with you, and it certainly is a lifetime process. So Marnie, did you have anything else you wanted to look at in terms of the astrology or anything else that you wanted to add to what the discussion is right now?
I would just say that something that struck me when Kerry was talking about looking at 2020 versus now and, you know, kind of learning from our mistakes and stuff like that, and how that's just so, I feel like what we learned at that time was a lot about like our resources, what we have, what we use, and how close everyone is to literal like despair, homelessness, starvation. Like we had such issues with just like our resources, which I think of as kind of connected to 8 as well. But it was like, wow, we're really close to that. And I'm looking now at like all the ways that we did learn some from our mistakes, but then when I see people do things like, well, you know, you got to go back into the office. You can't be on Zoom. And it's like, why? You were existing fine on Zoom, but now you need to micromanage people, or all of these people who already had money, basically grifting all of these PPP loans and taking them for themselves, while meanwhile, people who were living hand to mouth are being punished by, you know, the employment development department to pay back like unemployment funds of like a couple $100 a week. And it's like, there's all these ways that we really didn't learn from our mistakes that I find very frustrating. And of course, I'm an Aquarian too, with Moon in Aquarius and North Node in Aquarius. So I'm always like, oh, but why can't we all just be equal? You know, like I want that so much. And I tend to get caught up in the idealism of that. but I think that all of those themes are going to very much come home to roost. And it's also hugely impactful that when Pluto goes into Aquarius on January 21st or 22nd, one of those dates, 20th, 21st, it's basically this right when the sun goes into Aquarius. And so like, it's like right there, boom. It's like, it's not just entering Aquarius, it's entering Aquarius at the same time the sun is there shining a light on all of this. And I think that's huge, because how often does that happen? You know, like I don't know, because I didn't look it up because I ran out of time, but like it's unusual to say the least. And I think that that's gonna impact it as well to make it even more vibrant to us. The sun shines a light on things. So
excellent point. Caroline, what do you think about that? The idea of the sun and Pluto being exact there in Aquarius?
I think it's huge. I think it's one of the biggest events of the year, astrologically, and probably for the next 20 years, probably forever, because the sun, and we talked about this a little bit last time with the sun, the solar energy of the sun conjuncting Pluto. To me, that's nuclear. I mean, we're talking about the power, solar power. Right. And I think it's really funny that, in this, in our dialogue these days, solar power is not as strong as this other power. And I'm not talking, necessarily about, I use it as a resource, but our star power and Pluto, it's going to be revolutionary. I think a lot of it's probably going to work out down on the ground, and nuclear energy. There's going to be, as far as solar, the sun and Pluto together, to me, that is nuclear energy. And I think we talked about it before about the past is fusion, the future is fission, and Aquarius is the future, right? So I think we're going to see a lot of that's coming with a lot of energy this month. And it's on the 20th when the sun ingresses into Aquarius at the same within moments when Pluto ingresses into Aquarius. That's profound, Marnie. It's a big we're exploding into a new era, and it's a nuclear era, and I, it can sometimes come with a crisis that we have to pay attention. And that was my worry, because Pluto can be very explosive, right? That we may have some crisis we have to pay attention, right? And it's going to change everything, and it's going to take us out of this Pluto and Capricorn era like a rocket ship. It's going to be big, and I wish I could say it a little more eloquently. But it's crazy.
This whole year, it's like, to look at even just, we're in January, and it's like, even just New Year's Day, Mercury went direct on New Year's Day, and I sort of had that feeling of like, we got to hit the ground running, guys, because we're in for a ride. It's not this like leisurely kind of chill start to the year. It's like, we're going, guys. So jump on.
There was an earthquake in Japan. And that's, and we got the earthquake. We've got, a lot of astrologers are predicting, there's going to be a lot of shaking of the earth because of the, the Uranus Taurus situation, Uranus and Jupiter situation.
I know there's so much, but yeah, it definitely has that feeling of like, get in, losers, we're doing a revolution. Like
that's right. Yeah.
Work to do this
for sure. And we're leaving behind these Plutonian autocrats of, the capitalist fascists of, the last 20 years. It's,
and the old guard, and
all of that, it's gonna move very fast, because Aquarians don't like I said, they want the future, and they want it now.
Let's get there now.
Let's get there now. And that's going to be the energy of the entire, collective. It's like, we're done with that, the Pluto and Capricorn, oligarchs and et cetera. Yes, Marnie.
No, I'm so like, and I know we got to get off Pluto because we got like so much to talk about, but like, I've also been thinking a lot about just the death of the old guard as Pluto goes out of Capricorn and into Aquarius or whatever. But then there's also the boomer generation who's born with Pluto and Leo. They're going to have Pluto oppose Pluto.
Exactly.
Like the boomers are going to, they're gonna get hit, like
you boomers. That's good, Marnie. That's a good point.
Like, okay, boomer. Okay.
Well, it's a generational thing, and because I've been reading The Fourth Turning, I'm kind of obsessed with it. Have you guys read that? Krista, have you read The Fourth Turning? It's a wonderful book. It was written in, it's funny because it was written in, I think, 1997, and he predicts, the fourth turning coming. And they were in the third turning, and he talks about the generational shifts.
Right.
When a generation shifts into power, everything changes, and the boomers had such a profound effect on the world. And now that the boomers are in old age and they're leaving, and Gen X is coming into power, and the millennials, that causes this shift. It's called the fourth turning, a crisis point. And it's been, the speculum is like 84 to 100 years of human life, which is also a cycle of Uranus.
Right.
So if you go back to the cycle of Uranus, the last time Uranus was here was in World War II, 1941. So we're finishing this cycle. It's a huge fourth generational cycle, and boomers are the ones that are leaving us. So, sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, Pluto can definitely take up the energy, because I mean it's a big shift. There's no doubt, because it doesn't change signs so quickly, and that's and we also the U.S. has a Aquarian moon, even though it's a late degree. But it's got that energy of the Aquarius, so it's definitely going to take up the conversation a lot for a while, and it should, because I personally think that we don't understand Pluto. Just a little bit of digging I said I don't think we get it, and I think that's it's kind of like Neptunian that way. Neptune's a little like that. But there are some other things. So I know that we can talk about, if you want, some of the times of the year. I know that, Caroline, you wanted to talk about the springtime, and that does seem to be a pivotal time. So we could sort of jump into there if you like, and look at the spring and talk about what you see there.
Well, this April, I was trying to decide, as I was going through the lunations, the new moons and the full moons of this year, I was trying to pick what's the gnarliest one, what's the best one. And so I went way down in the weeds with that. I was like boobs deep in the cosmic weeds. So I did come up with, I think, the clearest one, as far as the biggest impact of our reality, is going to be in April, because that is why am I in October? April 8th is that great American eclipse, right? Y'all know about that, right?
Yeah.
So
tell us about that. Not everybody knows.
It is at 19 degrees Aries. It's a solar eclipse. It's a total eclipse, and it's going to be visible in the United States. And it actually goes from Mexico through America, United States, up into Canada. And it ends up kind of around Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. Now, it will be seen, it will be in totality for 4 minutes in some really big major American cities. That's why this is kind of everyone's really paying attention to this, because it's going to go over Dallas, and I mean, just huge, big American cities. So, and it's what happened is the eclipse that happened in October in Libra, that crazy eclipse that they started demonstrated or clued us in to the Israeli-Hamas conflict and the United States Pluto return. Anyway, that eclipse, this is the opposite of that eclipse. So as a solar eclipse, right? Because that was Libra Aries, this is Aries Libra. So they're tied together.
Right.
Okay. So we look at what started then. Well, it was October, and so that was, so this one, on April 8th, this eclipse is kind of it's a polar, it's kind of it's as far as you talk about balance, but it's conjunct Chiron, exactly. And so I think this has to do, this war axis, the Aries Libra is war and peace, justice and revenge, all of that. This is this is going to be a big exploration of our traumas and our wounds and our healing and human suffering. So it's I think the whole year kind of reacts off of that in April. So yeah, it's a big spring, and it also has. We've got all of these. We haven't talked about the outer planets like Neptune Uranus conjuncting fixed stars. So when that happens, these fixed stars, it's an entire, human. The human journey is it's a big time in our humanness, and I think that goes with the Pluto and Aquarius. And are we as human beings, like not just as systems and and our suffering that we bring onto each other through war. And so yeah, I think that to me was the biggest one. And also I think there's going to be a lot of, we're kind of ignoring Neptune. I'm kind of annoyed with that with other astrologers. They'll go, oh, Neptune, that's just about dreams and stuff and illusions and stuff. Dismiss. But it's going to be conjunct a fixed star sheet this year. And so at the beginning of the year, and Saturn's in Pisces, I'm like, oh my God, this is all naval. There's going to be some naval conflicts. There's going to be, a lot of military, naval, probably, and you know what, in the Red Sea, that's blowing up right now. And with the Houthi rebels and all of that. So we're going to see even more of that. I think that this wars that we're in are all going to start. We're all going to, our eyes are going to be turning to the oceans, right? Because Neptune, the oceans, I called it the wounded healer warrior moon, Red Sea pirate moon. I was like,
I like
and
it.
also Neptune's revenge. I mean, the ocean's revenge. We're having all of this crazy whale action too with the orcas.
I think the whales are probably going to rise up and just kill us. I hope.
They're much more conscious than we are. They're not. They do it a different way.
What you said, I'm going to spark off of what you said, Krista, about the intelligences, right? And Pluto being an Aquarius and intelligence and the mind. Very much we're going into that. We're exploring intelligence, right? That's what this is. I mean, we're talking about artificial intelligence, but we're also talking about, alien intelligence, but whale intelligence of, we're starting to communicate with them. We're starting to figure out how to talk to them. And that, I think that's going to really be a big part of Pluto and Aquarius too. And because the ocean has something to say to us, and we're ignoring it, and it's at our own peril.
Oh, Kerry, I'm sure you would have an opinion about the ocean and the environment here.
Yeah, I actually work as basically in fisheries for natural resource management. Currently, I work with the University of California. And yeah, it's just on a personal note, like it's well, this is what I do for my day job. I've committed my life to it basically. So when I receive these news about the ocean rising and like the surf, we're having like king tides. So yeah, like the coastline on California, there's so many videos of that online where the ocean is just like moving in. But it's happened on the East Coast too. They had some bad storms, and where I'm from on Long Island, I spent my childhood growing up on Fire Island basically every summer. That's what I consider my home. And I was like crying the other night about it because I was looking at all this footage of the beach just basically being gone and coming to the reality. And yeah, this year's about reality of how that's probably not going to be there anymore in my lifetime. And like hoping that just a forest is preserved and hoping that a piece of it remains and that it's not all gone, but knowing that that's kind of a really high hope to have as we move forward with all of this. And yeah, it is a great, I mean, for me, it's very much like a death, a mourning that's happening, but for other people, this is going to be experienced very differently. Some points throughout the year for me, I am not looking forward to the election time, as we all are. Because, well, first of all, points of interest, it's always October, no matter the year, because that is when we start to get a sense of the following year and that theme. And that's also like coming off of September when we had our last, like the theme of the year kind of came to a culmination point, and it was our last opportunity to make use of what needed to happen that year. So we exit out of December, and we always come into October, and we're faced with the future, and we have like just 3 more months to like wrap it up and what that means for us, etc. But in this year particularly, October, ooh, I would group October and November together because October is a 9 month that's shedding, that's endings, that's things falling apart. We are in that month right now, but it looks right now to be like a lot of cleaning and making room for what needs to happen, and yeah, dealing with the past. But when this happens again, when this cycle happens again, it will be more of like things that will fall apart. And I would group that with November because endings are always beginnings. November is a 1 month, so something new starts. What that is, though, is when you think about everything that's happening, it's hard to say how one feels about it. I mean, it depends on where you are in the world, what's going on. But for us in America, I know it's like we kind of like look at all of the trajectories that we could go down, and it's all kind of just like it none of it ends well. I don't think. I mean, there's like three options in my mind. It's like it's the status quo. We just do what we've always been doing and business as usual, but we're outraged by that. Or it's, the thing that happens that we're all trying to avoid happens, and then we're outraged about it. Or we have this alternative, and oh my God, we realize, yes, an alternative is a choice. Wow. And we go down that path, but then we've never done that before. So everyone is just losing their mind. So I'm like looking at all I think we all are too, just outside of numerology, not even going into numerology, looking at all the things that could take place and are just like, I don't even want to feel that right now. So I think eventually we'll get there. I think January really just needs to be this time of literally cleaning out your physical spaces and taking inventory and realizing I have more than I thought I did. This is great. And then in February, the year actually begins. Then in March, we kind of learn how to balance some stuff that is extremely imbalanced. And in May, we just kind of like work hard and have consistency, but a lot of obstacles come up as we're coming on, just through these hectic waters. And, I think some interesting times will be June, August, and October and November as one chapter of something exiting and something starting up again. And yeah, that's my thoughts for a short, brief summary on the 8 year. I'm tired just thinking about it.
Just to support you, August I thought was interesting too. Is that the Democratic convention in August?
I don't know, but
I agree with you. That was an interesting month, and then also new beginnings in November. I got that with the tarot as well.
Interesting.
And then do either you know, Caroline, Marnie, is the Republican convention July? Is it July? Because if it is, I think it's going to be an amazing show of egos.
July, yeah.
It had it was like a really strong egotistical card, and I said, oh my God, that's just going to be a whole over the top drama. So, but yeah, I don't know. I had a little hope because of a couple cards that there might be some pleasant surprises around the election. I'm not saying that's going to be perfect, but there were a couple really middle pillar cards in the Kabbalah, which I really liked. And I thought, okay, because honestly, I didn't even want to do a prediction. I was like, I don't want to look at the cards at all. And then I was like, okay, there's some that actually look pretty decent this year. So, because I think we all have a little PTSD from, I don't know, since the pandemic started, really, if you think about it. So anyway, I thought just to tell you that it kind of supports some of your own observations. What do you ladies think, Marnie and Caroline, about sort of, this is an election year. Obviously, it's going to dominate a lot of the conversation here in the U.S.
First of all, can you hear the ice cream truck at my place? Because it's super loud and annoying.
No.
I think he's going away. Oh my gosh, it's making me crazy.
Oh, it's nice.
Now I want ice cream though.
I like the distant fairy.
I did. Before I go down the election road, which is fraught, I did want to add to just something that we were talking about with the Chiron conjunction of that April eclipse and the wounds of war and all of that kind of stuff. Because I think we can't forget about Mars.
Oh yeah,
Mars is going to have some hot action.
Yes.
No pun intended, or maybe it is. But I wanted to point out just that when Mars is going to go into Aquarius on Valentine's Day, and it's going to exactly conjunct Mars at 0 degrees Aquarius. And so I saw that and I was like, oh, we're going to have that. It just feels like, talk about a Valentine's Day massacre. I was like,
Mars is going to conjunct Pluto, you mean?
I mean, Pluto. Did I say? Yeah. Mars is going to conjunct Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius. I don't know what I said, but that's what I meant. So yeah, and that's on Valentine's Day. And I just thought that's kind of interesting that, that because Mars is, associated with war and stuff like that, it got me thinking about just that. And then going into the wounds of war, kind of Chiron conjuncting the eclipse. And I just think there's going to be some intense Mars energy that we can think about, because I think that one of the themes for us, especially with what we're seeing with like the way that people are responding to the, Israel and Palestine conflict, and that these war wounds that we've been walking around with, and also even going back to World War II, and just like this uptick in like people getting back on board with fascism and Nazi propaganda, just all kinds of really dangerous stuff. And I think that these war wounds, I just feel like we've been walking around with some of these things for a while, and it's like those kinds of wounds that at some point, it reminds me of, Caroline will know what I'm talking about when I say the bullet metaphor, but it's like walking around with this kind of bullet under your skin, and for a while you're fine, and then one day it's like, ooh, it's festering, it's turning necrotic, and it has to come out. And I think that that's something that we're looking at in terms of our country's karma, that like we have to dig that infection out. We have to deal with it, because if we don't, it's going to continue to fester. And anyway, that's just kind of where my head was going when we were talking about the wounds of war. And then I also wanted to go a little bit into that, going into Saturn and Neptune being in Pisces all year. I think that there's a lot of themes of what, Saturn is very concerned with limits, and Pisces and Neptune, they're so limitless and there's no boundaries. And, I think that there's going to be a lot more, we're going to see a lot more issues with like, what boundaries can we set on migration and immigration, and the practices of, with Neptune and Pisces. It's like we've seen a lot of people get more into spirituality, and astrology's seen this big, like, people are getting more into these things, and people are more open to talk about their mental health. And, how many ads do you hear for BetterHelp? If you're on YouTube for an hour and a half, you hear it. And, it's very common. And I think with Saturn there, we might see some people trying to put more like kind of either practical application in a good way, but also even putting restrictions and setting boundaries for things within those like kind of Piscean themes.
Interesting. I wanted to go back. I do think the Chiron is pretty important, because I'm pretty sure it's the Chiron return. And I've been rereading the books, because I went through my Chiron return in my 50s and then at 50. And Richard Knoll talks about something really interesting. Chiron is not simply the wounded healer. It's gotten kind of into that niche, but the story of Chiron is much more complex and interesting. And one of the things he brings up, and he was one of the original books on Chiron, he talks about Chiron being the place of finding your quest. And if you think about Chiron in the myth, he trains a lot of the heroes. And so I think if we broaden, one of the things I'm hoping will happen with astrology is that it will start to broaden in ways, I don't know why, as it became popular, because this is in old books. These are in books. These are not new things. And somehow it's become a little niched in certain areas, and everyone talks about Chiron as the wounded healer. And that's really not, it's Chiron teaches. He had a very successful life. He was married. There's just so much more. And I love that idea of a quest, because obviously if Chiron, sometimes it's because of our wounds, we go on a quest. We go, okay, this is where I'm questing. And so maybe if we start looking at some of this in a broader way, it won't be so terrifying, like this is a call for a quest. What is the quest? What is the United States quest? And I think all of us sort of know, we've all talked about it, a lot of the needing to heal the wounds from the past, the indigenous wounds and the founding of this country, and Caroline talking about the Constitution, so seeing that more from that rising up as something we can do, and the hero's journey in a sense. I like that. It's a really short little book. I really like that book on Chiron that he has. But I did want to add that because I think it's important to Chiron to understand that it isn't only the wounds of Chiron, which he received at the end of his life, more so that there's more. And also, as I said, this is in the astrology books that originally came out about Chiron. So somehow it got lost a little in translation.
I would like to add something about the Chiron situation. Marnie, to what you were saying about February, and actually Kerry too, what you said about that is when the new year really begins, right? Mm-hmm. And remember, we're going into the year of the dragon, the Chinese year of the dragon on the February 9th, I believe it is. Isn't that the moon? So it does, that's when that powerful energy of the dragon with the Pluto and Aquarius. So it's showing us this is a power year, right? But to go back to what you said, Marnie, about Mars going to the 0 point ingress point with Pluto. Mm-hmm. Also, Venus will be there too, right? She's going to do the same thing around that time. Both Venus and Mars are going to hook up at that 0 degree point with Pluto in February. So to me, I agree, Kerry. I think that is really the beginning of it all. January is sort of processing through it. Venus also
February 17th, just FYI. Yeah.
So February 17th, that's Venus?
Yeah, that's when Venus goes in. So it's all
okay.
Really...
On February 19th, Krista, that is when the North Node conjuncts Chiron exactly. Okay. So it's at 16 degrees. So that's really important for our Chiron journey, our quest, Chiron's quest through this year. So it begins, that's the big conjunction on February 19th. So we've got a lot of that coming in February, and it'll be probably around that crazy new moon and February 9th. I call it the dragon moon because right.
The Aquarius new moon is year of the dragon starts. Yeah,
year of the dragon starts. And also that you were asking Krista about July and August, and Kerry was talking about it too. Mm-hmm. And it's really funny because I had a note here on my moon notes. That is 27 degrees Aquarius. Now, Krista, you know what that is? That's the conjuncts the United States moon.
Yes.
The Sibley moon chart, right? So that is going to be in Jupiter square Saturn for the first time. It's 17 degrees on that moon. So and the Mars will be at 21 degrees Gemini. That's going to conjunct Donald Trump's Sun North Node situation there. So that's going to be that's a very USA karma in August. So that full moon, August 19th, I bet we're going to start seeing some America stuff there, but in July too, July and August. So the summer, it is going to be a very, I think because of the election, of course,
right.
But we still have that 27th degree of Aquarius moon. So that's telling us something. And I think it's also something that is repetitive a lot in the, when you look at this election astrology and is women, because remember the moon is the soul of the country. Right, but it also represents women and the people, right?
Right.
And that is conjuncting the moon. I think women are going to play a large part of the power formations that are happening this year. And I think it is kind of a little bit of the look out for the goddess energy, the feminine energy. I think it's going to dominate. Women are going to dominate this power matrix that's building now, that in October. And so that's a big moon too.
Yeah, I think the women's issues thing, because it's like I didn't spend a ton of time on it because it's just this ongoing hell. But then I found out about something just like it's still kind of a developing story, but and this was probably inevitable, though. We finally have like a woman did actually die in Texas because she needed an abortion and couldn't get one, and she died. And we've had a lot of women getting sick and fleeing states and, having to go really, really far for care. But a woman actually died now because she could not get an emergency abortion that would have saved her life. And this is not, I say it was inevitable, but it's like, it's absolutely heartbreaking and vile. And I don't see that, we can't keep going on the way we're going on. The stuff that's going on with women's issues and rights is so egregious and appalling that there's no way that that's not going to, that fight has to go on. It has to go on. Our lives depend on it. So yeah, I think that's definitely going to be, it's going to be interesting. I think there's an interesting thing. I hate to even bring her up, but like I was looking at it and I was just like, it's kind of weird that Nikki Haley's birthday is January 20th. Like she's literally born on that end of Capricorn, 29 Capricorn, 0 Aquarius cusp. We don't know her birth time. So it's like right there. And I'm like, it's so weird because it's like, oh, this, like the Republican Party's a hot mess. And I'm no Nikki Haley fan, but I think it's very interesting that of all the people, the Republicans, she's kind of the only one that's had any shot at like kind of creeping forward a little bit, with Trump obviously being in charge of everything for some reason. But it's like all these other men are just sort of falling away, Chris Christie just dropped out, and people are just dropping out, and it's like it's kind of weird that she's born on January 20th. Bizarre, but
that is.
I saw that last night, Marnie. I wanted to talk to you so bad about that. It was really late. I was like, I kept putting it off. I said, oh, I have to do Nikki Haley's chart. Oh God, all right. So I did it last night, and as soon as I saw that 29th degree of Capricorn, on her sun, I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah, and what she said, like the sun could have gone into Aquarius. Who knows?
It was minutes away from going into Aquarius. Okay, just like on the election during the election, Pluto is going to be back to 29 degrees.
Yes,
right.
That's what I think is so bizarre.
It is.
We're at that 29-0 mark again. It's so weird.
I think to make, and you know what, we're kind of, the elephant in the room is the election predictions, right? We're like skirting around now, but yes, Marnie, when I saw that, I was like, it just kind of, and the fact that Jupiter will be in Gemini, right, at 21 degrees, and that's going to be sitting right on top of Donald Trump's stuff, but it's opposing his moon.
Yes.
And I kept thinking, I said, it's going to be a woman. It's going to be a woman that's going to take him down. And I'm like, and I thought that in every way, as far as, the men can't seem to do it.
That's
they
true.
Can't seem
it's
to.
mostly women that he's up against. If you look at the
going
after him, it's
legally,
yeah,
in the legal arena, every arena. And it's these fierce women. And when I saw Nikki Haley in the first Republican debate, which, I admit I watched, I was kind of like, what is this? And I was really watching it for Chris Christie because Nikki Haley was really low in the polls. And I watched it, and it was my intuition. I was like, oh, okay, she stands up against these men. She's powerful. And it's like, and I was like, ooh, I would watch out for her. And I was like, but then the next day people start talking about it, and I'm like, uh-oh. And that's why last night when I looked at it, I was like, I kind of was upset with myself for not paying attention to my intuition. You know what I mean? Because I should have been looking at that way before, because I dismissed her, right?
Well, what about Robert Kennedy? What do any of you think about?
That's a child. I looked at his chart, so well, let's do that right now.
Yeah, does he have a legitimate chart? I wasn't sure I could find one that was valid, like it was definitely his time of birth.
I didn't even look at him at all. Like I've honestly, he is so unhinged. I have a hard time even thinking about him. He repulses me on a very visceral level.
But I think the independent voters, the independent party, or whatever, the independent party, it's no
People
party,
who view
but
themselves as so independent. Yeah.
no, but I think that there is going to be a big, I think we're going to have a, I think because the last time it happened when an independent candidate threatened, anybody was Ross Perot, and he got all the way up to 40%. And I think that this year is going to be the independent party is going to be like, because also look at this, the Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius energy, right. That's about independence and people trying to find an alternative, like Harriet said. So I think that's going to be, it might
probably will be an issue.
It will. It's going to threaten the two parties, and it's going to probably change. It's probably going to change the vote. You know what I mean? I think it's going to have a big impact on it. So someone like Robert Kennedy, we really need to look at his chart because yes, someone could come in.
I know. There's probably going to be more with Pluto and Aquarius. I would think more that alternative third party, independent party, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Start to actually become more relevant, I think.
Very relevant, I think. So it's going to have a big influence on it all, I think.
Well, I think that we'll probably do a show on the election just a little closer to the election too. And maybe the summertime, it's a lot to cover in general. I'm glad you mentioned, though, Jupiter in Gemini, because it will conjunct the U.S. descendant in July. And so, and Uranus is right there near the descendant too. So I don't know. I think Jupiter sometimes also gets a little overlooked in terms of its effect on things. It's like, it didn't during that pandemic when it conjunct in Capricorn, the Saturn Pluto. Then everybody's like, So
I think the mistake people make about Jupiter is because they're like, oh, Jupiter's just good. It's just great things happen. And it's like, oh, everything's going to be awesome. And it's like, it's a gift. And it's like, Jupiter expands and it makes bigger. So when Jupiter in 2020, when it conjuncted the Saturn Pluto stuff, it was like everyone's like, oh, it's gonna get that. It's like, oh no, it's gonna make it huge. And it did as soon as Jupiter hit that.
Wait, it's not an epidemic, it's a pandemic.
That's why with Jupiter this year, there's so much Jupiter this year, you guys. That's why this is gonna be like, it's going to be so rock and roll because it's like with Jupiter and Uranus, it's just going to make everything bigger, brassier, just more. We're jumping the shark. We're jumping the Sharknado.
Oh, we are jumping the shark.
I was wondering, based on looking at Chiron return 50 years ago, there was this record tornado event where it was called Super Tornado Outbreak. It was the worst tornado outbreak in U.S. history. Within 16 hours, 148 tornadoes touched down across 13 states from the Great Lakes to the Southeast, April 3rd to 4th, 1974. I said, uh-oh. I said, are we going to have a bunch more wind events? And I know we're moving eventually into sort of that age of air we've talked about.
And then also shows. Water events with Saturn and Neptune are both in Pisces the whole year. And so there's maybe we're going to have air and flooding and a little bit of everything.
Right. So, Krista, so in 1974, was that, you talked about the Chiron return.
That was like the 50 years ago when.
That was when Chiron was in Aries?
Yeah, it's the same as this year, basically. There's a couple fun things too. Like it's evidently, I went back even 100 years. It's a good time to invent games. Rubik's Cube was invented 50 years ago. Oh, the big news, though. Oh, my God. How did I miss this? August 8th, 1974, Richard Nixon resigned. 50 years.
That's great.
I was like, whoa, my God. That could be good for
give me that date again.
August 8th, 1974, Richard Nixon resigned.
Mm-hmm.
So
Chiron,
could that mean Trump is gone?
Yes.
That's what it means
to me.
I just thought that was a good thing. It's like, yes, please let that repeat.
That's interesting.
Even just going, into the Aquarian vibe versus the Leo vibe, that's very much like it's the king must die and the death of celebrity culture. Like if it wasn't for celebrity culture, we wouldn't have had that asshole. Sorry.
Exactly. You're right.
But it's like that, like opposing that Leo energy. I think he is so bad. And doesn't he have Leo rising?
I think so, yeah. And he's got like Mars right in there.
He's the epitome of
Trump, 29 degrees, conjunct Regulus. Yes, he does.
Yeah. He's so, but it's like very much that like I'm the king.
He's the king,
I'm the boss, and I'm a and I had a TV show, and it's like that. So I think that energy is I don't know. I do think he's going down. I just hope it's in time.
I do
Krista,
too.
I want to go back to that just for a second, because that's
Sure.
a really excellent predictive tool there with Nixon during the Chiron return. So yeah, so we're going back to I mean, you have to, in order to heal, you have to have justice. No justice, no peace, right? And so we're kind of revisiting. It's so funny because in the collective right now, especially in this country, we're bringing up Richard Nixon all the time. You
Yeah,
know, it's like,
that's
well,
right. Right.
yeah, and how he
Yeah.
was pardoned. And are we going to do that again? I think that might be a question this year too,
Mm.
right? That's really interesting point there.
Now, I had a number question to ask Kerry, and it might mean nothing, but do you think, Kerry, that the number 91, the 91 indictments, has any significance numerologically? I mean, first of all, it's a hell of a lot of indictments, but I just thought, the synchronicity, it seemed like a kind of cool number, 91. So I didn't know that. I guess that's a 10-1. Do you think there's anything, or is it just kind of a coincidence?
I mean, I wouldn't look too far into just random numbers everywhere. I kind of just mostly focus on the chapters of us and as individuals and on the planet. I don't really, unless like you're being haunted by a number, that's also a phenomenon. But when you just like notice like random things like that, I would not look too far into it. But like just some initial thoughts right off the bat. 9 and 1, that's an end and a beginning, and that's what I was talking about with October and November, where things are falling apart and also starting up again. Though that combination is like the stop-start codon to a sequence of events.
Yeah.
But it's like, and yeah, I call Trump Yump because because
That's kind.
in
That is, I called
numerology,
him way worse. Yeah.
well, in numerology, name gives you power, what name that you choose and stuff. And I mean, what is the definition of Trump? That's like an actual word. It's like you're overbearing over something, and he has a cult following. So I'm like, I call him Yump. Because people know who I'm referring to, and it's not that.
Right.
But I highly recommend looking much more closely at RFK Jr. He has the leading
Yeah.
for young people. And don't watch the news. Spend at least 40 hours watching his long videos of he has like many hours on YouTube and various places now where he's being interviewed. I recommend watching those and developing your own opinion of that. And also I recommend just looking at his career and things that he did, and you're gonna like a lot of things and you're gonna not like a lot of things, but you'd be surprised. I think that if anyone's going to change the course of events, it's going to be RFK Jr.
Wasn't he good with the environment? One of his more positive.
He sued Monsanto. He has an advanced environmental lawyer career, which is why I like him. That's where I'm coming from. And
Yes.
there's a lot of things that I don't like about him, but I do think that if there's anyone who stands a chance in the situation that we have, it could be him. So I would just take a closer look at everything that is on. Again, don't like watch the news about him. Don't read the headlines. Just go and do your own research and watch the long interviews and see what he actually is saying. And you'll be like, oh, okay, this is what's happening.
That's
Okay,
fair.
Kerry, I just did it. I just pulled up his chart. And his sun is at 27 degrees Capricorn. And that's the degree of the United States Pluto return.
Oh,
Wow.
That's very interesting.
That is really.
Yes. Yes. Whoa. 27. And he's got moon in Cancer. So he's born on the full moon. Very interesting. Okay. So yeah, I think you're right about that. I think we need to look a little deeper in here with that. Right there, my first sign, 27 degrees.
Yeah.
Capricorn. Yeah, he's gonna.
I've noticed if you
right.
listen to him on like 1.25 speed, it's easier because of his speech issue. It makes it easier to hear. I'm not trying to be ableist. I'm saying it just makes it easier to hear.
Yeah. He talks about that a lot. He's like, I feel bad for everyone who has to listen to me. He's very humble about it. He is like, yeah, I cannot listen to myself talk. Like I'm going on this interview and I will never listen to it because I hate it, which is pretty rough. I
Yeah.
think that will force anyone to kind of go through a self-analysis and kind of
Hmm.
be character development at least, but you never know. I don't know. I don't know any of these people actually. I just look at their career and I watch what they say and this kind of stuff they say and how they say it, and I develop opinion off of that.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how I approach it anyway. But yeah, I that's my best guess. If anyone's gonna stir things up, it's gonna be RFK Jr. and he is winning the vote for young people, age 20 to 45. He's winning.
Well, some of the older people, like my father, who's 93 coming up, he is interested in Kennedy because it brings back the whole Kennedy era. I mean, it was like, wasn't it 60 years recently for the assassination? My dad is really into John F. Kennedy, but he's looking at him too as someone like you're talking about, someone he thinks can bring change. And even though my dad's been a big Democratic Party supporter, he's very disappointed with the Democratic Party right now, and particularly how they treated Robert Kennedy, which is true. They didn't treat him well. I agree with that. I watched the video about that a while ago, and so I think also some of the older population, ironically, like Kennedy for their own reasons. And you're right, he's got a mixed, he claims he was an anti-vaxxer, but I don't know. He didn't impress me with his position on the vaccine during the pandemic.
That's where I kind of was like, there's some like a little woo-woo with the health stuff that I think can be dangerous, and that's why he's off-putting to me. But
yeah, that is for me.
Young people are very disillusioned with our approach to foreign affairs. And so if anyone's going to come in and, do better with that, they're going to have an edge over someone like Biden.
Right. Now, what about the economy? We haven't really, we sort of maybe should try to touch on it a little bit, because that seems to be something that I think we did last year a little bit about Bitcoin and what we thought was happening with the economy. What are your thoughts about the economy? Caroline, do you have any thoughts based on astrology?
Yeah, well, with the Jupiter Uranus conjunction in Taurus this year, that's what it's about. It's because Taurus, rules Wall Street. Taurus rules and Venus rules, the financial state of affairs, and it's the status quo stuff. It's the Venetian stuff. It's extremely wealth, and it's also practical things like food and things like that, the food supply. So, yeah, I think with it conjuncting Uranus, that shows technology. Technology is going to just blow up, the financial institutions as far as Bitcoin and digitalized currency. Yeah, we're going to see that this year for sure, and it's probably going to be around in April, around that conjunction. It's going to be all year, but I don't think, and I think what it is, it's going to be a frontier. I think we're the ones that have controlled the banking and all of that, and that's what Pluto and Capricorn was about for the last 14 years, was all the whole financial chaos that happened in 2008. We're still backlashing off of that, right? And that was about the banks and real estate and all of that. And it's coming to a point they're losing control. They're losing, because what's happened is currency is going to become more democratized, because if it goes digital, who's going to control it? The people are. It's not going to have a centralized control. So yeah, I think we're definitely going to see that this year. That's going to be one of the big explosive financial, and I don't necessarily think it's doom. I don't think that at all. I think it's the opposite. I think it's actually a new way away from the Capricornian capitalist systems that we've been trapped in. Yeah, we're definitely. When I first saw in 2008 when Pluto went into Capricorn, I was dancing around my house going, "Oh, the death to capitalism!" Yay! Finally, Pluto's going to take you down. Okay, but but it kind of has. It has definitely changed the world the world systems. It has.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to see a lot of that this year.
There's also, I think, related to that, because there's a huge sort of like pardon my language, a Taurus gangbang happening in May. But there's
You were waiting to say that. I'm sorry, but weren't you? You wrote that down.
Yeah, and a pile up. There's like so much is going. So there's like the sun goes into Taurus, of course, for a good portion of May. Mercury goes into Taurus, Venus in Taurus, Jupiter in Taurus, Uranus in Taurus. So like I think that we're gonna see a lot of stuff in May with, just like, again, with money, with how we relate to money. Uranus being there is going to be like, how can we revolutionize our money and how we approach it, and how could I think that all of that stuff, like crypto and all of that stuff, we're going to see a lot with that in May.
I agree. I had also May. I picked the card, the Empress, which is associated with Venus, and it was one of the few. This year there was more. There's only a couple major arcana, which doesn't mean it's more important, but there was a couple Venus cards I really was interested in, and also I sort of saw that I did sort of a double interpretation as the fifth house, the Empress, would be related to speculative investments, and also women and children being highlighted. In general, I thought there could be some positive developments in education with women throughout the world. Again, it can be very, very, even the beginnings of it. So even though there's horrible things happening, I thought there could be some positive developments in general. And also creativity, even though we talked about that, I think particularly Kerry did last year with the 7, but that there can be some new developments creatively. And, Michael and I are kind of late to the game, but we finally let go of our cable TV and we're saving $80 a month. It's like crazy. The streaming stuff is making it much more democratic. You can get so much for free.
Right.
And we just didn't know. We decided to do it for my father because he's on a fixed income and he doesn't need many channels. So we got the Roku device and all this stuff. And I was oh my God, I can't believe this is the first time I felt any kind of victory lately financially. Is that's one of the changes, I think, with Pluto and Aquarius, is that technology being more equal and available in cheaper ways.
There's some great free content. Like I'm obsessed with Canopy now, which is really cool.
There is a lot of free content.
So. Free content with your library card. It's really awesome.
Marnie, I want to just go back real quick on that point you made about May. I kind of like that full moon, the Sagittarius full moon. There's May 23rd, because in May, Jupiter and Venus are going to conjunct in Taurus at 29 degrees. Isn't that interesting? So Jupiter and Venus, and that's a very Venetian ruled month anyway, because it's Taurus. So there's a lot of Venus energy, but Jupiter conjuncting Venus in Taurus. Now, if I was going to, be playing the stock market, I might be looking really seriously at that date.
I agree. Yeah.
Jupiter connects. And remember, it's at 29 degrees. 29 degrees Taurus, right before it ingresses into Gemini.
We're seeing a lot of that 29 action.
Oh, yeah. 29 is a big
29s this year. It's like looking at Neptune for like all of the summer through the end of the year is at 29 degrees, which is not only is it the end of a sign, it's the end of the zodiac ruled by Neptune, which is like Pisces is the end. It's the whole zodiac story. It's just like,
when Neptune goes into Aries, we're going to be a completely different reality. And I agree with what Kerry said. This is very much the end of, we're very much coming to this ending point. And, but it's kind of like, the door is open. The door is blowing open right now. But we haven't quite stepped through it yet. So I think with Neptune, when
because next year
Neptune
we're going to a 9-year,
because we're 29. We're 20 in astrology. The 29th degree is the anaretic degree, and it's extremely important. And it shows the ending of huge cycles, of humanitarian cycles.
Sure.
So we're sitting right there.
And election day having that 29 degree Pluto as well. That's intense.
So but that May full moon is also in Sagittarius, and it's at 2 degrees Sag, and that actually conjuncts Biden's ascendant. So I think that moon's going to have a different flavor. I think because there's a lot of the Jupiter, Venus, all
Oh
of
boy,
that.
I gotta
Venus
look out
energy.
for that.
Yeah.
2 degrees Sag.
What did you call it? The Torian gangbang? What did you call it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
You can leave me out if that's not okay.
And Venus and
No,
Jupiter
it's
hanging out
fine.
together. Yeah.
Gotta have a sense of humor. Even if it's a little dark, it's all right. We like
it's
it.
Taurus, man. She's a lover.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she's not a fighter.
Well, there's that version of Venus that's very lewd and lusty. There's two sort of aspects to Venus. There's the Taurus and the Libra aspect. I always forget their name, Uranus. I don't know what it is, but so there is that part of Venus we're supposed to embrace that is more, lurid and crude, and then there's the sort of eloquent one, loves beauty and all of that kind of thing.
She's a courtesan,
Yeah.
She's
a
lady in the
fine.
streets and a freak in the sheets.
I can't wait to see what she does when she hooks up with Jupiter, though. They're going to
it's going to be a big party.
It's going to be a big dirty party.
A big party. There's a lot of people in that gang.
So, hey, did any of you notice Mars is going retrograde?
Yeah, December 6th.
I was like, we haven't even gotten to December 6th.
I know. I just wanted to make sure we included that a little bit since Mars doesn't retrograde very often, or as often in Leo.
Yeah, in Leo.
Which is our North Node. The U.S. has a North Node in Leo in the 8th house.
I don't mean to add an element of chaos, but I can hear my cats fighting.
See, well, we're talking about Leo.
Mars is going retrograde.
Talking about Leo.
I think they have an opinion.
Yeah, about Leo.
They're going to knock something over in a second. I'm just warning you guys.
Okay, that's no problem.
Get ready here. So that's Mars. That's a Mars retrograde in Leo comment over there.
Exactly. So what do you think of that, Caroline?
It's going to be a cat fight. It's going to be a universe going. It is.
That sounds accurate.
Because it's fighting for supremacy, right? With the Leo,
right?
Fighting for who's gonna rule all this? Because that's what's gonna happen. All the power starts shifting. All the power starts shifting. We're gonna be fighting for supremacy, which is
right. We'll just be a month past the election. I think and with that Mars in Leo going retrograde, I feel like the vibe is gonna be like, but her kind of egos that are bruised egos, defensiveness, hurt pride. So how that plays out in the world, we'll see. But
it goes back into Cancer in 2025. So
right,
because
retrograde going to Cancer, which is also I think too, like there's a little bit of with the Mars and the Cancer, like there's that sort of defensiveness and kind of got to protect your underbelly kind of thing,
So remember, the new administration, the United States, will have Mars retrograde in their chart.
Right.
Right.
Oh, right. Because it's retrograde until February 2025.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That's exactly. And then it goes back to the original degree of May 3rd. So
interesting, but the new administration will be sworn in under Mars retrograde, because it's almost like, I don't know, like I hadn't really thought about that before, but like because there's such issues of war, and I kind of wonder, especially kind of harkening back to that history of World War II, and when things started to first go bad, and how so many people were like, look, we just don't want to get in another war. We get that Hitler's doing all this terrible stuff, but we just don't want to get in another war.
Yeah, of course.
We just got to stay out of this war. We got to stay out of this war, until finally it's like, oh crap, we can't stay out of this war. So I kind of wonder if Mars being retrograde if that's going to be a theme. I'm just speaking off the top of my head now. This is nothing I thought about before, but that theme of like, when do you go ahead and jump in the fight, and when do you kind of back off and wait to see how things go? When do you take action? Mars likes to take action, but it's in retrograde. So,
and also I just looked it up on the inauguration. I mean, on the new January 20th will be the new administration, right? When they're sworn in, it's going to be 24 degrees Cancer. So that's interesting. Mercury, that will be in the chart. So we'll have Mars in Cancer.
And that could also be like themes of like keeping it on the home front too, because it's Cancer. It's like,
that's good. And also again,
to go out there, and
again we have
degrees.
Mars and Cancer are kind of like, Cancer's the moon, and it's the feminine and it's home, and Mars, they don't really like each other.
Internal, external. It's very
Yeah, and it's retrograde. So an exploration of that. And of course, as a country, is a Cancer country. So
I think
yeah.
Mercury is almost a similar degrees in the United States chart, Mercury and Cancer, which.
Oh, you're right. Let me, I have that here.
It could mean that we're going to have, I was thinking Cancer, Mars, Cancer. Maybe we're going to have that, we're going to, have to have a drag queen who's tucking in charge.
I told you, RuPaul.
RuPaul for president. I'm still hoping for that.
Yeah, that was our first video. It was very cheeky.
That was.
And not to be taken seriously.
Very
And I think I'm going to
cheeky.
delete it because it's insane.
No,
that's
don't
the
delete
idea.
it. No, don't do that.
Okay.
I'm
I will.
wondering if maybe one of you would know if there's going to be any sort of revisiting of what happened during the writer's strike as a Venus in Leo. I'm wondering if anything's going to come up from that at around that time in Mars and Leo. I'm just
So glad you asked me that. I'm so glad because I was
yeah.
just thinking Venus is going to go to 26 degrees, 29 degrees. And I mentioned that before we came on, 29 degrees Leo. And remember that Venus retrograde is when the writer's strike happened.
Right.
So I was thinking today, I was going, that when Venus goes back to that 29th degree, because that's what was crossing over. I wonder what that's going to bring up. And is anyone check that out really quick when Venus goes to that degree?
So Venus.
Yeah, I wish I could remember some of the things. One of my friends who knew more about the details of what would happen, and there were some time frames that were in the future in terms of like making sure things were happening. But I unfortunately don't remember it now. But anyway, it just crossed my mind. It could be connected a little to that.
September 29th. I'm sorry.
September
I didn't
29th.
remember. September 29th. Venus goes. Is going to go it's going to be. I'm sorry. September 19th. Venus will be at 29 degrees Leo again, conjuncting that Regulus star, and that had a lot to do with world leaders, but it was also that Venus retrograde period. So, what was the question originally? You said about the writer's strike.
I didn't know if that because Mars being in Leo would have any relationship with something coming, back to talk about with either writers or the actors in terms of like that during that period. And only because someone had mentioned to me that there were some dates that were sort of set ahead that were related to the settlement. So I don't know. I was just more of a guess thing. I didn't really look into it.
It's a good guess. Actually, the date is June 15th is 16th. Mars will be at 29 degrees Leo.
I was actually wondering. I was wondering if something was going to happen in June. I've been meaning to ask you guys that because for me, it's like I think it's a 5 month. I think, and if that is the case, 5 is just absolute chaos. It is just entropy. It's everything going in all directions at the same time, and it shakes things up.
The very first day of June, we do have a Jupiter's going to trine Pluto.
Yeah.
Aquarius to Gemini.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you, Kerry.
No.
Me neither.
That answers the question.
Yeah.
So
Go
June
ahead,
being a sort of more chaotic numerological month.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah, the number 5 is like you get shampoo in your eyes and then you trip and you sprain your ankle and then you meet someone extremely important and it's like that. It's like anything can happen. It's Murphy's Law. Anything that can happen will happen.
Oh, that's funny.
And combined with the 8, that's a very business. If like you were just talking about Bitcoin. I mean, I kind of have a biased opinion because this is my personal year cycle. So I have to figure out my finances, but I bought Bitcoin for the first time because I think it's just like anything where you should, if you have some money to invest, you should do that and you should spread it out. And so that's what I've done. And I honestly, if there's going to be a financial collapse, it starts this year, honestly. That's what I think.
Yeah. I could say that. Yeah. June's crazy year too. There's a Venus, the Venus Cazimi that's happening on, I believe it's June 4th, where the sun Venus conjuncts the sun. That's always really important dates for Venus because it's a Venus star point, and it's in Gemini, and it happens June 4th is the exact date
Oh,
of the Venus Sun Cazimi in Gemini. So yeah, so what happens again? That's going to have to do with financial matters, and it's in Gemini. So God,
Oh, and then
just good.
Venus on the 17th, Venus is going to square Neptune. Oh my gosh, there's so many.
Yeah.
There's so much. I keep seeing new things
Yeah.
that I missed.
I know it's a crazy year, huh? I know.
now one of the
Yeah.
things I think the reason why the U.S. has like this rebound economically has to do with its Pluto and Capricorn in the second house and its retrograde. Retrograde can be, this is according to a couple different astrologers, extreme. So instead of just being about being backwards, it's about extreme behavior, or it doesn't act the way it should. But, I think Pluto is also the place, I always forget this, Pluto can be wealth in your chart, where you have wealth because of the idea that in the underworld, there's all that treasure. And I was like, oh, yeah. So I think that's one reason we get away with what we get away with in the U.S. is because of that placement of Pluto. I'm not saying it will necessarily be forever and we haven't had tragedies, but that's a strong energy, to really crush us completely. I don't know that would necessarily happen. More like maybe a period where we're crushed and we come back. And that's my just opinion why we don't just suddenly just completely bottom out.
The USA chart has Jupiter conjunct Venus in Cancer in the 7th house. So yeah, it's always like that's a very, that's wealth. And that's big wealth, so that's why we're like the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Like we have amassed more wealth than any empire. Empire. I was going to say something, but I forgot what it was. So.
Well, I think we're more likely to bring ourselves down. I think that's more likely how we're going to eventually, the unrest will express itself is through some form of a civil unrest is how I would say that, because you're like, we're lucky with that Jupiter. In that case, yes, I think that we are. But we also kind of, I feel, you can talk about that 7th house being overly expanding into other countries and things like that too. Stealing the wealth. But
we have friends too. There's a lot of the allies.
We do have a lot of allies, absolutely.
Yeah, and that Jupiter being there, that's that's why we have to be very, we have to nurture that much more than we have been.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we could do that, actually. I don't see why not. But it has to do with, we go back to, the idea that in the long run, each of us has to evolve as an individual before the collective can possibly evolve. And I know that seems like a trickle effect, but I mean, take for instance, like one person, we'll use Nikola Tesla since he's such a brilliant example of one person that changed the world because of his inventions. And so it is possible for one person to have a great impact on civilization. And I think that's our only hope. I don't really think.
Right, but he wasn't an American, so he was a Russian, so that doesn't count. I'm being cheeky here.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying that in terms of America, as in terms of just how do we progress if we have all these things going on. I still believe that one person can actually make a difference, and that groups, whether it's a Democratic Party or a religious group, I think that's just not working I think that's become blatantly clear that it's not working. Groups are not working. They're not, people are leaving churches, people aren't happy with their party, whatever it is, whatever group it is.
Well, and it's funny how Aquarius has this interesting duality associated with it, which is a lot of talk about just being an individual. It's like you think of the rugged individualist, but at the same time, Aquarius rules groups. It rules those sort of groups that you form. So maybe there is something coming with this next phase of Pluto where we think a lot more about, and that's a big theme in this country anyway, of like, that individual, my freedoms versus, what actually supports the group and what contributes to the group in a healthy way and to all of humanity versus the individual. I think that's a big theme.
Yeah. And remember, Aquarius is humanity, humankind. It's Prometheus. It's when man stole gods from the fire. It was like putting power back into, the mankind. Humankind.
And he brings this this gift that benefits humanity.
Right.
So I think that with that Aquarius theme, and being in Aquarius, you sort of have this feeling that it's like, yes, I'm an individual, but what can I contribute as an individual that will benefit the group? And Aquarius is very concerned with that. It's great that I'm an individual and that I'm quote unquote unique. So if I'm so unique, what is it that I can bring to this situation to benefit the group? What fire can I bring to people? You know,
that's the big question that I think will be in the next 20 years. That will be, till 2020, 2044. That's when Pluto goes out of Aquarius.
Not 2024, 2044.
What did I say? 2024? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
2040.
I barely accepted that it is 2024.
Right. I wanted to address something you said, Krista, because it triggers something in me. When you talked about Pluto being wealth, and Pluto does rule the plutocrats, right? The wealthy. There was a study done, I found it really fascinating, by an astrologer about lottery winners. Like, what was the dominant common aspect in people that won a lot of money through the lottery, like massive amounts of money, and Pluto does rule extreme wealth. And it was really kind of interesting because the one aspect that was the most prevalent was all of them had some sort of Pluto personal planet aspect.
Oh.
And traditionally in astrology, everyone's like, oh, Pluto, oh, that's going to be a scary, hard time, and it's going to be transformation, it's going to change you, and it's difficult, right? It's a difficult aspect. But it's funny because they all had this Pluto, like Sun, Pluto Moon, Pluto Venus, which normally you would think, oh my God, But I think that it just speaks to how the wealth transformed them so profoundly. And a lot of them, fell, the lottery winners curse, there's
right.
like a curse with it. So I thought that was really interesting. And I think about that a lot when I do personal consultation, when I look at someone with a Pluto aspect coming up, instead of going to, it's like, it can bring you great wealth. It can bring you, it's going to change you.
Whatever
right?
it brings you, it's going to transform.
Right. And what transforms someone more than anything is great, great wealth or great, great poverty, which would be a very Plutonian extreme, right?
Sure.
Well, especially in our capitalist hellscape that we're still hanging in.
Now, I did want to just thank a couple people. Charlie and LM Spira are chatting there with Michael, and thank you for tuning in with all your comments.
Oh, hey, guys.
And
Hi.
appreciate that
Hi,
a lot.
Lily. That's my friend, Lily.
And Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add in? I just wanted to make sure if you had a chance, if you wanted to say anything for this year, 2024.
No, not a whole lot. Other than I'm going to just double down on my prediction that Bigfoot will not be found again. So there you go.
Okay, well.
Big disappointment for the
you're
Bigfoot
wrong.
people.
And Trump will get indicted again.
Again.
That was from last year.
Yeah.
So.
On and on, So, all right. So sort of, is there any sort of other major themes that any of you want to sort of talk about? Like we mentioned the finances a little bit. I wouldn't mind adding maybe a little bit of talk about mental health, because I think that has becoming out more. At least the commercials I'm seeing about fentanyl is like, how to save people that have a fentanyl overdose. And I'm like, what? It's pretty frightening. But is there some possibility of, because things are coming out more, that maybe there can be more help for any kind of mental health issue?
We have a lot of Pisces energy. Like we have that going on, which we've talked about a little bit, the Pisces energy. And I think, did we even talk about the September eclipse that's in this Pisces that we're moving?
We didn't get to
Pisces?
September.
No, we didn't do the
October.
September eclipse.
Carrie
So
did.
there's a
Carrie
full
talked about
moon
it.
eclipse. I think it's September 18th, 25 degrees Pisces. And then there's another Libra eclipse. So we're doing that whole shift from the Libra Aries eclipse vibe to the Virgo Pisces eclipse vibe. And September is like that first kind of Virgo Pisces vibe. And because, we have Saturn and Neptune in Pisces the whole year, I do think that mental health issues that's going to be huge. Mental health issues, spirituality issues, all of that stuff is going to be big. And, imagination and creativity in the arts, we might see some of that coming out too. But it's a lot. And I know we're at like 2:48, so we're running out of time.
Well, the Neptune being at that 29th degree of Pisces and an anaretic degree. Neptune, I think we tend, like I said, we tend to be kind of dismissive of the ideas, of Neptune, which is, mental health. And we tend to not really. Neptune is from the Greek god Poseidon. It's the same thing. Poseidon was a very powerful god. And it's kind of like, I'm wondering why recently in the whole, is it guys have, we sort of ignore him a little bit. And I find and that goes back to the ocean, what we were talking about, Kerry. We got to start paying attention to mental health and the ocean. You know what I mean? These Neptunian, because Neptune is going to be conjunct the fixed star sheet. And it's going to, we have to pay attention to this stuff. And you're right, Marnie. I think that when it gets to that degree, it's going to be around September. And we're going to have to, we're going to have to face our demons, our
well,
mental
yeah, and it's
health
like this sort of, I think the crisis of like all the disillusionment and the resurgence of like weird cults and like culty thinking and conspiracy theories and the prison industrial complex and throwing, it's just like we're at this point where it's like you can't just throw people in the mental hospital or the prison and just be like, we're just not going to look at it. Because I think that's kind of been our approach, is we just won't really look at that. And I think,
and we're spiritually depleted, and know what I mean. And the Neptune, and that's what I mean. We ignore that. And spirituality is kind of like, it's woo woo, and it's like, it's like, and mental health is kind of woo woo. And it used to be such a stigma to even go see a psychiatrist.
Oh, you couldn't even say that you had.
Oh no, it was shame. You were shamed.
Yourself up by your bootstraps, And I think that's we're already seeing like that's not acceptable anymore. But we're seeing the dark side of spirituality too, where people do get caught up in in crazy conspiracies and stuff like that. There's a dark side to it, but I also think that we're reducing stigma, and maybe Saturn is helping us legitimize like that like it's part of us. It's like, you need to take care of it, you need to handle it and not just be ashamed of it.
We talk a lot about and that buzzword of self-care. I thought, that we've been hearing a lot in the zeitgeist that's coming around. That's very, Neptunian and issues to dealing with, who we are. And I think that, we're headed for a crisis with that too.
I think one of the crises, based on something I just heard on Robert Greene's page, he was talking about something I feel really strongly about, is this overwhelming information we're getting through social media, and that we have to see it as a terrible disease where we have to turn away and not read that website and not look at that Instagram post and not post all the time, because it's really, I feel like at some point our psyche's all going to crack and say, I can't take any more in. It's like,
I know.
When is that? I already feel that now happening. I said, maybe that's part of it too, that mental break from all that, information overload.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think,
and we are kind of addicted. We have, and that's a shadow side of Neptune, is addiction.
Yeah.
We have, we all are, and I hate to admit it, but I've got my phone. There is an addiction to information, and that's going to be a big theme of the next 20 years.
Yeah, it's going to be harder too when we move away from into more air. It's almost like we're going to have to really pay attention to the body. And really, like Kerry said last year at the end, she talked about going out and seeing the world of wonder and connecting physically. That's going to be challenging, I think.
Yeah, we are going to all be living inside our heads a lot, and our screens.
Yeah. So,
but we have to figure it out.
Well, the 8 is usually your physical body, so I would argue that like it's more our physical senses right now. However, August is a 7 month. That's the realm of the mind. If something comes to a head, then that's probably then where our like physical reality has to contend with our internal state as a collective. Of course, this is like going into more personal stuff, which I try to not do because we're all going through our own cycles, and that's going to look something like totally different. But yeah, health this year is also, like I said, about health problems, and our mental states are heavily tied into that, and we need to acknowledge that. Of course, But then and then there was something else that I wanted to say regarding like the health issues and our yeah, like our mental health. But I can't remember. I should have written it down. And
Maybe it'll come
yeah,
back.
I think
Well, and
Chiron
that
speaks to that too. I think
and that
Chiron speaks.
Virgo Pisces, the eclipse, if it's full moon, then of course the sun's in Virgo, the moon's in Pisces, and Virgo is very associated with like the healthcare industry and like more like physical health, whereas Pisces is a little bit more of the mental health. So there could be, I think that we're also seeing how important it is to approach those things holistically instead of looking at it as like, here's your body, here's your mind, whatever,
right.
good luck.
And
It's like, no, at some
Hmm.
point, these things, we know that like mental health problems can, cause physical health problems, and
Right.
physical health problems can cause mental health problems. And so it's that interconnectedness, I think, that we need to still do work on, but I do think we're making progress, but we need to be more holistic about our approach to health.
yeah, I think that's something, a good piece of advice on my end is I think health this year will come out of reevaluating, like I said, what has value, what actually has value. Is it getting as much money as you can and then that's it? Or is it getting enough money so that you can have more free time to yourself? The real resource here, that the only real resource that we have as a human is time.
Right.
And we know that, but we also don't live like that. And we are very much in love with our own subjugation. It's no one wants to work anymore. And why, it's just like you're un-American if you don't want to work 60 hours a week. And it's like, dude, the 40-hour work week is oppressive as it is.
Right. Yeah.
Like
Right.
in our health is time. It's, like even if you're going through the worst case scenario, you're not going to get better unless you just stop and do nothing for a long period of time.
Right.
And we are just on the treadmill, go, 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 go. And like we learned with 2020, going back to what I said, that had consequences. And then we finally got off the treadmill. Some of us, some unfortunate souls, that just meant more work for them. But a lot of people did get off that treadmill in 2020 and for once was like, oh my God, what was I doing? So I think, yeah, what do we value? What actually has value to me personally? Yeah, that's like what is actually worth my time. So for what that looks like for me, for example, because this is my personal 8 year, is trying to figure out how to use everything that I already have in a way strategically that gives me more time. Like I have an expiration date on my job because every job in my field is just temporary, unfortunately. And it's just like, all right, well, you could be upset about, this having the financial insecurity of not having a job security, for example, which I think a lot of people can relate to right now.
Hmm.
Or you can see it as an opportunity, be like, okay, what do I have? And how can I use this to prolong, the time that I have instead of just acting out of fear all the time and just going into the next job, any job at all. And then you never get off that treadmill where you're working extremely hard at low pay, or you're working at a job maybe that you just don't like and is like killing you slowly. Either way, um, I think that how we choose to use our time is very much involved with our physical health this year.
And speaking of time, we have 2 minutes. And so perhaps Marnie and Carolyn would like to just say one more thing about the year or not. So whatever you like. Marnie,
I want to say
Caroline,
something about. I'm sorry. Yeah,
go ahead.
Carrie. I want to say something about what Carrie said with numerology with the number 8. In 2026, all of these planets, the big major planets, are all switching into fire and air signs, right? So that's what a lot of astrologers are talking about, the new beginning, right? Because we're still in that transition phase, right? We're still at the 29th degree, and wouldn't that be 2026 would be a 1 year, right? Carrie?
8 and 2 is a 10, which is a 1.
2026, that would be a whole new chapter that would start. And so, yeah, I do
Right.
think 2025 is going to be the actual collapse of something. And
Right.
we're actually going to try to figure out how to pick up the pieces and do something with that for 9 years after that. I think.
Right. So that's what I just kind of wanted to
Yeah.
end on there, is that, yeah, we are astrologically, and, you know, humanity, we are at this place of endings, and we're still there. We're there. We're very, very, the 29th degree. We're at the number 8. So we're almost to 1 again. And everything at that time will be a new chapter. And astrologically, everything is different. It's all fire and air signs. And it's all, you know, it's very, you know, Saturn and Neptune will be in Aries at 0 degrees. And it's like, wow, that's a whole new, brave new world. It really is.
Well, thank you all, Kerry and Marnie and Caroline. Thank you so much. It was really went by fast as we thought it would. And thank you all for listening in. Join us next time as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure together.